Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of The Fellas, the ultimate F1 podcast for fans by fans, where we dive into the drama of the F1 weekend. While we count down to the Australian Grand Prix next week, we thought it would be good for us to talk about our history and love of Formula One and motorsports in general. So, allow me to introduce our esteemed panel of enthusiasts Ray, Simon, and I'm Ralph. Let's get into it.
How did I get into Formula One or how did I get into motorsports? I really don't know. How I got into motorsports, it really started at a really young age. I loved the mechanics and mechanical aspect of automobiles, probably when I was 3 or 4 years old. I remember when I was living in London, having a remote control semi truck and trying to make it purr and trying to make it idle and taking it apart. And I remember being at 4 years old trying to take a remote control semi truck apart. So I was always loved mechanics, mechanical engineering, loved automobiles, loved how they were put together, how they worked, and so my love kind of started there. I think um, as I moved to New York and moved to Brooklyn, um, the love just got worse. Loved automobiles to the fullest. Loved looking at cars. It didn't really matter where they were from, who made them. Anything that looked fun to drive, I wanted to learn about, read about. I wanted to know their 0 to 60 time. I wanted to know how much they weighed. I wanted to know everything about that car, and that love kind of just transcended through time and through time, right? Um, Racing then became a passion, right? I always wanted to go karting and race against others, and I had to win. It was just one of those things. If I, my daughter even had a birthday party where she was. We took her to a go-karting um, place with all her friends, and I made sure that I wasn't on the track because I knew I would want to win and beat everyone. It didn't matter what age it was. So um, it's just always been something that I've loved. How I got into Formula One, um, to be completely honest, I watched a lot of European races. I watched V8 supercars in Australia. Didn't really watch Formula One until I had a conversation with all of you guys one day. We were on the phone, and you guys were just talking about Formula One so adamantly that I said, I got to watch. I got to get into it. Then I learned about Lewis, and I listened. And when I learned about Lewis, I realized um, Lewis was the epitome of who I wanted to be, right? Kid that grew up in London, loved cars, loved racing. His father was fortunate enough to, have three jobs to fund his racing um, acumen, and he got into professional racing. That would have been my journey if I knew that it was available to me, or if I had the financials. And so I saw Lewis and saw myself. So then I really fell in love with Formula One after that. So yes, I'm biased. I'm a Lewis Hamilton fan, but I also love all the other F1 drivers. Right? I love the fact that there's 20 drivers in the world that are their best at what they can do. And I know last week we were making fun of Lance Stroll, but I think overall he's one of the 20 best drivers in the world. So there's nothing that he should really be ashamed about, right? I'm probably one of 10 million best drivers in the world compared to him, right? Um, but yeah, I got into Formula One because of you guys. I really and truly was a V8 supercar guy and a European racing fanatic, and I got into Formula One. Now Formula One has propelled over all the other motorsports racing that I watch, and I still watch V8 supercars. I still watch a lot of other racing, but I'm not missing the weekend, and I have to see it live. I can't see it taped. I have to see it live. I watch practice and qualifying taped, but I don't watch anything else when it comes to the racing. I have to see it live. I have to, and it really comes down to this daggone iPhone, right? The alerts that you get always spoiler alerts. So I that's why I have to watch it live and not watch it 3 hours later. So if there's a race going on at 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning watching the race. It's just one of those things that I think I'm going to be hooked for the rest of my life, even after Lewis leaves. I'm really excited about some of the new drivers. Berman last week was a new driver, 18 years old, to jump in the Ferrari. I thought that was awesome. Lets people know at 18 you can become a Formula One driver, right? I think he's probably set that benchmark now. I think Verstappen was the youngest driver until that, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. So it really, really puts a great future for Formula One. Just as long as the cars are competitive and we can get some competition going, I think Formula One is in a good place. But that's kind of how I started. I love the journey that I'm on now. I actually try to find underrepresented kids in the cities and try and sponsor them into racing and into Formula One and NASCAR and other things like that. So the love is deep.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, mine is the same. I started with Formula One. Yeah, I started back in the late '90s watching Formula One. It used to come on Speed Channel. Used to listen to it. Listen to Bob Barsha, David Hobbs, Steve Matchett, and then Peter Windsor was the reporter in the on location in the pits. And I used to really enjoy watching it then. And when I started watching it, was a really good time actually because that's when Michael won his 5 world titles with Ferrari. That's when Michael had to deal with a newcomer that came in, Alonso, that beat him 2 years to the title. Kimi Räikkönen was a force there as well. And then I was also fortunate to be when Lewis, as a rookie, came in '07 and started battling with Alonso, who was there at McLaren. So it was something that I always watched and enjoyed. And actually, mine was the reverse. I got into V8 supercars because of you, Simon, because you mentioned it. And then when I started watching V8 supercars, I fell in love with that. Because that was some. I love Formula One and how they race, but they're open wheel. They can't rub. I'll say it this way: I'm still trying to learn about NASCAR. It's not a series that I've followed. I'm still trying to understand it. But I remember when I started watching V8 Supercars, I said to myself, I wish NASCAR could be like that, because the V8 Supercars, in some ways, remind me, um, they're sedans. So but those guys, they race. But anyway, so I got into that. But through those years when I was watching Formula One, it was pretty good. It was pretty good where you had battles. It wasn't always a runaway, like one person running away with it, even though there were some times where you had that. But then I was able to, I think it might have been in 2003, I was able to go to my first race, a Formula One race in Montreal. And then I fell in love with it all over again, to actually hear the cars. Like the television doesn't give it justice. The sounds, the pops that those engines make, and those cars back then were, I believe it was the V8 era. They'd stepped down by then, but those cars were mean. Even the speed of the cars, television doesn't do it justice. So anyway, I went to that, and then the following year went back again to Montreal to watch another Grand Prix up there, and been a fan ever since then. Never left it. Some years when it's a little, just one car winning, I may not have tuned in right away, but I'll watch the race like after when I get a chance. So that's basically it for me.
Well, I've been a car person, fanatic, and motorsports fans for quite a bit. Back in the day with Willie T. Ribbs when he was running, the back then it was IMSA. He was driving a Toyota for what's his name, the Iron Man for that. No, he was doing so. He did the Mustang for Roush, and then he did the Toyota for Ivan something. He was a big off road guy for Toyota, right? And so started following the sports car stuff for a while, and was watching that. And then my brother said, "Hey, you need to check out Formula One." And I'm like, "Formula who?" And he's like, "Formula One." And man, I have not forgotten my first time. I'm watching some pretty car with all these arrow strakes running around, and I'm like, okay, there's only one car going around here. So what's the deal? And everybody's behind each other. And then all of a sudden, it's pit time. And then I hear, oh, position change. And I'm like, what? What the heck happened here? I didn't understand that. So I tried it and then I walked away from it because I was like, it wasn't, I couldn't understand, right? And then I came back to it when Lewis joined because I saw a representation of myself, right? I didn't, we didn't know that somebody of our hue could be in that rank because Willie T. Ribbs was the last one and he didn't really get to go. So I started watching and then I started seeing some, passing on track. And I was like, okay, I've come to realize, I'll say this, that I wasn't as sophisticated as the other people to understand the strategy of, doing the pit passing. Whereas, I was more of a regular person that wanted to see two guys dive for a corner and see which one comes out, right? And I think that even now Formula One has realized that they, in order to catch some of their audience, they need to incorporate that type of stuff. They're trying to do that with the regulations on the cars so that we can see some on track action. But yeah, I followed up and I followed Lewis. Lewis was winning and stuff like that, and learned about the other part of it, the strategic stuff is when we're going to pit. What's going to be on the car, and things of that nature in order for it to for a team to win, right? And it's been eye opening, right, to see my journey as far as how I've come to it. But yes, I still remember that first day. I think it was a Schumacher car that was going around with all these wings on it back in the day, and I'm like watching this guy go around and he's like parading around, and I'm like, okay, what's going to happen? And it was a shocker, as I said, when they said, hey, someone so got moved up a spot. It wasn't that I didn't have the sophistication, right, for it. But I'm a big motorsport. I still watch V8 supercars. Now they have the new Chevy and Mustang, right? That's the new car now platform that they're using, Gen 3. And I watch Endurance, the WEC, right, and I watch IMSA, right, with the sports car stuff around here because it's I can kind of identify somewhat with that. Seeing these products is, they kind of look like street cars, but they really actually aren't. And and in my quest to become a better driver, I've been on a few of the tracks that they have raced on, and it kind of gives me more of an appreciation and an understanding of what they're doing some HPDs and stuff like that to see what goes into you having a car that goes fast and be consistent with what you do. So that's yeah, in a nutshell, yeah, that's kind of where I've been. How I got to Formula One and started Formula, and I watch what Peter Windsor does. I like the technical side of it sometimes. Just to understand what's going on and how things are getting to where it is. And yeah, it's been a good journey. I still watch the other series, and I still will consider to continue to watch the other series as moving forward. That's my little story.
Yeah. The fascination for Formula One to me is the especially Red Bull this year and last year and the year before, how they're able to take their chassis, their motor, and their engineering, and really just without question, beat everyone else on the field, right? Um, and that starts in behind the scenes, right? We don't see that part during the racing. We don't see what some of the engineering is. I know Netflix now has a series with Formula One, but it's more all about the drama of Formula One, not necessarily getting into the engineering portion of it. And I guess they can't really talk about that because they're letting secrets out, right? But that fascinates me more than other series. The tire wear and how you have three selections of tires or that you have to manage, right? Um, that you don't really see in NASCAR or V8 supercars. You don't see that challenge and that strategy.
Mhm.
So that also plays a role, right? And then you have all these tracks that have different wear and tear, different cornering, different straights that also play a role on the wear and tear of the vehicle, degradation of the tires. Um, the driving skill of each individual driver. Because if you notice, there are some tracks that some of those drivers love more than others, and you can tell right away, right, how they're definitely providing different strategies and really moving their way up in the field. And the consistency, right? Looking at some of how those drivers are doing 56 laps, 60 laps, 70 laps, whatever it is, and you have to have that focus at that speed for almost an hour and a half, right? And you can't have a headache, you can't have a bad day, you can't have a stomach ache, you can't, you can't, you have to be so prepared up to that race, physically and mentally, that to me it's just unbelievable. I bet you if we had an opportunity to do a race weekend, we probably won't last even 5 minutes.
Oh, that's for sure.
Right. And to me, that's what makes it so engaging, right? You're seeing these 20 people, these 20 drivers battling not only physically, not only mentally, but psychologically, and strategize and managing the wear and tear and having a whole team behind them. Knowing all of that is what makes the Formula One to me a fan-based sport.
No, well, I say, going back to the V8 supercar guys, I guess I'm a regular guy, race guy, right? Because, when I watch I've watched the V8 supercars, and I'll go back even to NASCAR. I really watch NASCAR twice a year. Whenever they go to a road course, that's when I watch NASCAR, because you see, rubbing is racing type of deal as they go for the corners, right? And I find that more entertaining. And even with the V8 supercar guys, they do the same thing, right? That they will, hold on somebody and rub on somebody in order to, go through. I understand that, you can't do that in an open wheel car, but for me, it's still I enjoy the technicality of them doing that, right? Because even though they have a quasi spec car, they still have to manage some of the stuff that, there are commonalities, I guess, across racing as far as, how long your tire stays, what's the surface you're running on, are you going to push? Are you going to, sit back and drive, cool the tires off before they do it. So I enjoyed all that technical aspect, even, and including in Formula One and Indy, right? Because I heard somebody mention that an Indy car is more powerful than a Formula One car. However, the Indy car does not have enough downforce to take the corners like the Formula One car. And I don't think I've seen that happen before, but I'd be curious to have an Indy car and a Formula One car with drivers show up on the track and just go and see who can, to see what the delta, if there's any, between the two cars putting down the lap time, right? Because it's just I enjoy the technical aspects of it, right? And trying to understand that stuff, because I watched like Julian Palmer when he does his breakdown on what's going on, along with Peter Windsor talking about what goes on. So I do love the technical part of the racing, and having the ability to do a couple HPDs. I have a new appreciation for what it may involve to a very minuscule point, in order for you to do it, because these guys are fit. They train and they train hard, because who is it? When they go to Asia, right? Lewis says he loses almost 5 pounds or whatever, a couple kilos, from the beginning of the race. Look at who's it? Sykes came and did the practice with the appendicitis, and then he had to go to the hospital, right? So these guys they are athletes, right? And they do need a team to help them out. And that's where, we can see where the team is, for instance, perfect example, Ferrari. That team is lacking in order to support their guy that's on the track, their guys that are on the track, right? And it is a team sport, right? Yes, it shows up that the driver gets all the accolades because he's the one representing the team per se. But the reality is that there's a lot more people back at the factory that, sit down overnight and, work things out, because there've been a couple programs where they show, what happens during race day at the factory. And really, they have a room like you'd find in like in an IT infrastructure, doing, you're monitoring a SOC operations center, right? They have their own operations center where they have multiple engineers sitting there pulling telemetry not only on track but back at the factory on the car and doing all that. So it's a very complex thing that they do, right?
Mhm.
And I appreciate all that because that, it just props to them. I can
Yeah.
only say props to them. And other drivers, I've seen how they do it because, as I said before, it seems like I've not seen one of them come from Formula One and do like sports car racing, but they'll do the ALMS cars that run like endurance for the 24s, like Alonso did, stuff like that. I think that's, even though it's much slower than what they do, but they can kind of port over to that type of stuff, a high downforce type of race car. So it's cool.
Yeah,
It's a
there
cool
have
thing.
been a few some that maybe didn't make it in Formula One and they've left and they've gone on to the Le Mans cars, the prototypes.
Prototype. Yeah,
Those cars are also missiles on the road, close, I guess, to a Formula One car in a sense,
yeah. From an era perspective, yeah.
But yeah, you're right. It's more than just the car. It's the whole. There's so much, and to think that when you come to the first race of the season, that's where you start to say, everyone is like, okay, did we design a good car? Did we get it right? And when you do, it's thanks to all those people you have, because from the aerodynamics to the engine to all of that, because everything has to work together down to the pit crew. It's a lot of moving parts. So when you see a team finishing first, winning a world title, that's huge.
I also want to touch back on one thing Simon said, right, with the Redwood dominance, because I had to do an introspective on myself to see why this one's different. And I realized that when it was Mercedes 2 drivers that were going at each other, right? So they were closer together. So even though they were ahead of the field, they were still, they captured your attention because they were going against each other.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in this scenario, there's nobody going against the other person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Checo's not stepping up and really being there. There's a sizable gap to it. So that's why I realized that now the focus is become more of on the rest of the field,
mm-hmm.
because Max is so far ahead, up front everybody else, in front
mm-hmm.
of everybody else. So I had to do a little introspective to really understand what's going on, why that was it. But yeah, it was the fact that Lewis had competition from the guy next door, and that's the thing that held it. Yeah.
The other thing that I found interesting, and this is the reason why I wanted to try and get some of the inner city kids involved with motorsports, especially Formula One. It's really to capture someone's attention at a young age.
Mm-hmm.
You tell them that you want to be a doctor or a lawyer, or it's all about the earnings,
mm-hmm.
right? How much money you can possibly make. Right. And the one thing I found interesting about Formula One, and I haven't really done the research in other races, but you could be a pit crew manager for Formula One making $1 million
mm-hmm.
a year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
right?
If you're that good. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And the rest of the crew, the majority of the crew, the ones changing the tires, the ones that are out there in the pit, make up to $300,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's
plus bonus.
Plus bonuses.
Plus bonuses.
Right? Don't win the championship. Right. So to me, motorsports is such a high $1 billion revenue tractor when it comes to cities and Vegas. That's why they want to have it in Vegas, right? People don't know that. People don't know that getting into these fields, and you don't have to be a doctor or a lawyer. You can have high hand-eye coordination and motor skills and be a part of a team, and you're still making money that most people can't make, right? So Formula One, in that sense, to me, is amazing how much revenue that they're generating in order to pay that amount for the team.
Yeah. That's why they don't want Andretti to show up, right? Because they claim it's going to peter out the pot that everybody gets, right? And they're saying, I heard that, Toto Wolff said, really Andretti didn't have anything to offer them that they don't already have, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, everybody's looking at that, because even sports car racing, you have guys that they make a sizable, but nowhere near what Formula One makes.
Oh
right?
Yeah, I mean NASCAR. I just looked it up. NASCAR, $65,000 is the maximum you can make as a pit crew.
Remember? Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you know how much money NASCAR makes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yep. Yeah.
that's why he wants to get into it, man. It's the revenue streams and the amount of money and the notoriety globally from Formula One is unmatched,
Yeah.
and it's hitting every major city that it needs to hit in the world.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. 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 It's a pinnacle. I would say that.
That and it's funny. I watched some IndyCar when they're on a road course. I've watched those when they're on a road course. I've watched, I watched Sebring. I'll watch that. Because
That
again,
was this past
it's not
weekend.
an oval, right? It's not an
Yeah.
oval. I'm trying to understand NASCAR more now. I'm trying to. I'm actually watching that series on Netflix, like what they did, which was a spinoff of Drive to Survive for Formula One, to see if it can help me understand, because I don't know anyone that I can really talk to about it. But I remember when they were talking about the playoffs, and I was like, wait, but this isn't basketball. Like, what is the playoffs? It's motorsport. But then now I'm trying to understand that, but it has a huge following. I'll say that. It has a huge following. And I am trying to go in and just try to understand it. Because like I said, the other stuff, the European racing for the most part, or rest of the world, V8 Super Cup, Le Mans, all of that, you could start watching it and you start to understand what's going on, and then you could see it. But I wanted to say one thing when you guys mentioned about, what Lewis and Nico, when they used to race, is true. You had that. That's what's missing. That's what's missing, because there isn't a team that can really challenge, and the teammates are not up to snuff of the, let's say, the number one driver, whether they have the label or not. So that's my disappointment, in a sense, is that I wish Checo was a little bit stronger, that he could challenge Max. You see it with Ferrari. You saw with Sainz and Leclerc. They would dice when the camera goes back to find them. You would see that dicing. You see it with Lewis and George a little bit.
Of course, yeah,
you see it, and can enjoy that as well. But when Formula One has like another team that's strong, and that's when you're like, my God, that's when you sit back and you're like, this is crazy. I've had times where I'm screaming in my living room, in the past, watching a race because a pass is, about to be done, So I just hope we get back to that, because it's a fun series. And like I said, going there to watch a race. I've only been to Montreal, but I would love to go there for many reasons. That it was a very nice time. Very nice.
Yeah, I can just imagine how Austin is probably the most tame area, I'm thinking, in the United States. I know Vegas is probably crazy, and I know Miami is probably crazy as far as going to a race. But that would be awesome to go to a race in Miami or Vegas. That's probably on my bucket list. Getting back to something you said, and I thought it was really interesting, is when you have two teams competing, not two individuals, but two teams competing. You got 4 cars, 4 possible scenarios of winners. Right. And then you have 4 strategies that you have to manage. So it's really exciting for the fan, because you really don't know who's going to win. You don't know who's going to win in their own house, and who's going to actually say, let this guy through. He's running faster than you at this point, to make sure the other two, or your challenging team, doesn't get ahead.
Right.
Who's going to qualify out of those 4 individuals? Who's going to qualify 1, 2, 3, and 4? What's going to happen on the first turn? All of those things. Name another race other than V8 supercars that actually start from the grid.
SRO started doing that. That's another sports car series. I think IMSA did it for a while. I can't remember if they still do it.
They don't. I watched it this weekend. It's a rolling race. It's a rolling start.
Right. Because it's chaotic, right? Right, when things happen. They did the even when they did the Porsche Cup North America. they started from a standstill, and you watch what happened this past weekend in Sebring, right? They like took out a bunch of cars in each race, right? So it's yeah, I guess from from a promoter standpoint, they said the rolling race is a little bit easier, but yeah, there's not many. The point I'm making is not many company racing series that will do it. Start from a race because the carnage that happens. What's going on there. Plus, so yeah.
I get it, but that's what the fans want to see. The fans want to see.
Yeah.
The fans want to see their hated rival in number one position against their fan or their
favorite
in the second position, and there'll be some way of getting ahead on the first turn, right?
Yeah.
To me, that makes it exciting for Formula One right now because we know Verstappen is once he gets ahead, he's done. He's
gone.
He's ahead. But what happens on the start, right?
Yeah.
Can he get a penalty that puts him in 5th place or 6th place? Now what is he going to do on the start, right? The rolling races to me just makes it too easier for the drivers. The fans want to see the carnage. The fans want to see the opportunity of overtaking or you bucking the car on the start. And I was surprised last week that Lando Norris didn't get a penalty for his
Oh, you're not the only one. I think all of the Formula One the commentary staff is surprised about that also. Yes.
Yeah. But all of that plays to me is part of racing.
Yeah.
When you're at a stoplight, I mean, I don't race anymore. I know you guys don't race anymore at stoplights. But when you're at a stoplight, right? What's the first thing on your mind is like especially if you're driving a stick is don't
stall. Don't stall and don't buck.
And then also the second thing is don't burn out. Right.
Yep.
Don't have a burnout.
You want to put the power down.
Right. So that's all part of it. And to me, when they do the rolling races, even in this weekend at Sebring, there were a lot of rolling races at Sebring. I watched most of them, but it was just no fun.
It's not entertaining or fun to watch, when it's just like you're watching a series of cars just going around. There's nothing, and that's why it was during that period with Formula One where it was like I think it was like Vettel was just winning. Vettel was winning. There was no real challenge for him. I started watching a little more Super Cup, to see that, see how these guys. That was another series that had me screaming.
Yeah,
in my living room.
Yeah, man.
Like, wow, the skill and how they're putting this pass on, so.
Yeah, I wanted to say one thing about the NASCAR stuff. When they run the ovals, I can see how it is not as entertaining, even though it's technical in what they're doing because they're dynamic. What my big drawback was that, whenever there was an issue, they were so close together that you get like 10 cars out the thing, a big pileup, right? But what I would suggest is try and watch it when they go to a road course. I think they have in North Carolina, they did a stadium and made it a roval also on the series. I think they're trying to increase more road courses within the series itself. But it's reminiscent of the V8 supercars when they're on a road course. That's when I find a big much more entertainment from it. But when it's on the ovals, I see them going. But man, whenever there's a pileup, you have like 10 cars going out. I'm like, whoa, I see dollar signs, even though I'm not paying for it. I'm just like, all these cars, but that's the thing that the fans love, right? From the series is that there's a big pileups because, there's some people I think they had interviewed that they show up just to see what car crashes.
Wow.
But the series, but they got the revenue from that person, right? Because that person paid to come, for whatever reason, right? And for that reason, sorry, that what I'm saying. But I enjoy watching them when they're on the road courses because it's good to see a little bit of rubbing and pushing because even in the sports car realm, it is frowned upon to do some of that stuff right now because again, it goes back to the cost on the team with the hardware that you're playing with, but. In NASCAR, they'll push a rubber out, push the bumper, and make you upset you in the corner and stuff like that. So it's fun, just like they do it on the V8 supercars. That those guys will do it with their new Ford Mustang and the Camaro now that they're running. It's interesting.
I'll say this with the Super Cup one that got me for a series where they truly believe rubbing is racing, and you see a lot of it. I was surprised in a way. I don't remember the race. I was watching at one point, and yeah, the driver that was in second, that was trying to get first, he was trying and couldn't get him. And I believe it was right hand corner, and he basically just tapped the guy in front right on the right rear of the bumper towards the side.
Moves them.
And you saw him start to, but he caught it.
Right.
They penalized him for that. And I was like, yeah, I agree. Because that was deliberate. You were trying to spin him off.
Yeah.
That was a little underhanded, and they penalized him. So I said, okay. I said, you allow racing, but you don't allow dirty, because you have to figure at that level, you know what you're doing. It's not an accident. You know what you're doing. Yeah. So I was impressed with that. It's again, bringing it back to Formula One, I've seen like over the years moves that I'm like, holy cow! These guys are in an open wheel car, and they literally move the other person out of the way. And the one that comes to mind, I've mentioned I think once before, was Montoya and Schumacher. I believe they might have been in Brazil, and Michael, was at his height, and Juan came into the corner. Michael had it, and he's going to take it from him. And Juan came in on the inside, got the line, and literally moved Michael off to the right on the track and took it. And I was like, oh my God. Because up until then, no one has ever done that, didn't do that to him, like came in and he basically manhandled him off. But
he poked him out of it.
Yeah. A lot of respect. And then I remember in the briefing after how Michael looked a little disheveled, and I was like, there's a new kid in town and he's letting you know. But so Formula One has its moments. Yeah. And I think when Lewis was battling Max, we were going to see that, and they come in with the heavy stewards coming in and getting involved. Like, let them race, let them race, like.
Yeah. They accidentally take each other out. Okay, they'll figure it out.
Incident.
They'll figure it out the next time, right? But it's the skill level, right? You're absolutely right? The reason why I fell in love with V8 supercars initially, because that was one of the first series that I liked, was the skill level at high speeds in the V8 supercars, and then you see it in Formula One, right? Like you're saying, they'll tap each other in V8 supercars, and the other guy in front, he just, just technically fixes it and he keeps going. It's just, it's like to me, and I hate to say this, let me make sure I use the right words. It's another level to NASCAR, in my opinion. And one of the things I wish Formula One did, even though I know this week coming up is in Australia, I wish that Bathurst was the track for Formula One. It on certain straights it's wide enough, but on certain turns it's really hard, like Monaco, right? But that track is unbelievable. I love that. I've never been there, and I love the track just based on what I've seen.
I would love to go to that race.
Yeah.
Well, it's a street, right? When the race is not there, it's just a street. But I think I'd be concerned about for the Formula One guys when they are on the hill, right? Some of the undulations there, and if something were to go south, they'd go over the hill, and it could be bad on that sense. So that's the deal. But I wanted to just circle back on something. That rubbing that you talked about in V8 supercars, watch NASCAR, the road course. That they'll unsettle a guy in front by tapping that bumper to push him out the way, right? And so it's kind of there. That's why I kind of got hooked on the road course for NASCAR, because of the fact that they were rubbing, and I was kind of looking at the V8 supercars and kind of saw some of that stuff happening, right? So the road course is when it gets interesting.
I think over there. Didn't they have a race in Chicago
on
NASCAR
on
one year? Maybe it was
in the streets.
Yeah, didn't they have?
I'm not sure because remember now there's also the junior series
Right.
to the Cup cars, right? And they sometimes have more road courses because NASCAR goes to Watkins Glen, if I remember
Right.
correctly.
Right.
They go to Sears Point out in California, right? And they run there, and then there's that other place. To be honest, I have not been up on it, but somebody else in the comments could, whatever say. But there's the one in North Carolina, that Roval that they created. I think it's in Charlotte.
Charlottesville, yeah.
Yeah, that they did that they run at. And I want to say I'm not sure if it's the sub series, which I thought at one point was the Infineon series that run at Road America. Also, but they do try to sprinkle in some more road courses into their schedule, and
Right.
I think it's a good thing because again, I'm a corner guy. I like to see a guy go for a corner, stuff like that. But not saying that doing the oval is easy either. But it's just for me, I just like to see people going for a corner, right or left, and stuff like that. So that's been my take on stuff. But yeah, it's interesting, and I see, but yes, in Formula One, like other races, as Randy Pope says, whoever has the inside of the corner, whoever has it is the person that has the corner. So if you're inside, you have the corner, and yeah, you can run that dude off because, as I said, you can say, well, the car was on the steering. I had to, do that to bring it back. Right. Even though now in Formula One, it's kind of hard because they have the cameras that look down at the cockpit so they can see the steering input of the driver during that situation, really. So
Right.
Well, the one thing I'll end on when it comes to NASCAR, that one of our colleagues, Angel, took me to a NASCAR race. I think it was in Vegas several years ago, and the camaraderie among the spectators
Mm-hmm.
was unreal. They were so welcoming. They were friendly. They're asking you who your driver is with an accent, right? Who's your driver? You come on over. You got plenty of food. Do you want to eat? I mean, these people didn't even know me from Adam.
Good. That was good.
I was really, really taken away that weekend. I was in shock on how they were treating everyone. I mean, this was everyone treating everyone with
Right.
well, and I haven't been to a Formula One race, which is sad. So I'm wondering if it's like that at a Formula One race when everyone is really happy to be there, being very hospitable. That was one of the takeaways. Forget about the race. I don't even remember the race, to be honest with you. I just remember how I felt when I went to that NASCAR race.
Yeah. Usually you have to be. I find it, when I go to an event I have not been to Formula One, but I've been to a few sports car races, and really, to really watch the race, you have to be home or somewhere else with the thing. But when you're at the event, it brings its own excitement, its own own entertainment. But you're not as totally engrossed in them going around the track. You have other things that pull your attention, right? Because I like to go through the paddock and stuff like that. And I remember I was at a SRO race a couple years ago, right, Simon? We were there.
Mm-hmm.
And down in Virginia, and got to sit down in a pit box to see how they did the pit, how they change tires and stuff like that. So
won't get that in F1.
Yeah, I don't think we have that connection yet where we could be inside the garage and watch what's going on. Yeah. But you never know what the future holds.
Watching, we want to go into the paddock.
Yeah. You never know what the future holds. Things might might blossom. But no, it's good. I enjoy the motorsports.
As a reminder to all our viewers, if you haven't already subscribed, please hit the subscribe button and don't forget to ring the notification bell. See you next week.